You guys ready to get going?
Let's do it.
All right, he's getting, I know Matt's getting everything set up. So first of all, we're being recorded, so I'm gonna have to be somewhat teasy today. I wasn't prepared for that, I'm not gonna lie. So it's gonna be interesting. But, all right, I got a question for you guys as we get started. What are you guys seeing? What are you feeling out there? Anything interesting? Are you busy? Are you slow? Are you dead? Did you get another job yet, Katie?
I feel like I need buyers.
We do need buyers, that's for certain. We still don't have any buyers, by the way. What's interesting is, so the buyers actually stopped like November 1st. And we haven't had phone calls. It's been that crazy. So we kind of thought we made everybody mad. We've since figured out we didn't make everybody mad. They just don't want to buy a house. So, however, in the last 2 weeks, we've had some phone calls coming in. Now, they're interesting, they're either slab pickers who say, I need to get pre-approved to see what my numbers are, and I need a $1,500 payment with no money out of pocket. And they don't know how that is. Or they're, I'm gonna buy in the first or second quarter. But nobody who says, I wanna buy home now. So I'm like, well, that's not gonna make for a very good January or February. So I think we still have an interesting winter coming. I've said for a while now, you guys have heard me say I think that the bottom is being put in right now. I'm gonna show you some data that suggests that's probably true. And I think it probably rides between now and February. And then I think we kind of take off a little bit again in March. Now, I don't think you're gonna get rich, so don't go buy a car in March. But I think you'll be able to pay your bills. Would be my thought process. So, I wanna share some things with you guys. We're gonna get started. Before we get into the presentation piece of it, I had to wait until this morning to finish putting some stuff together because today was a CPI release, which is what we really care about. This is all that's driving our world anyway, is inflation and the Fed, right? If they hadn't done what they were doing, we'd probably all still be going bonkers crazy with 3 homes to sell and all that's out there. So it's not really a bad thing. At the end of the day, we needed a reset, and that's what the Fed's trying to do, is reset our world. But I think it's interesting to kind of watch and see what's going on. So the good news is, and I'm going to show you the real numbers here in a minute, but we got good inflation data. So for those of you guys who've been in this class for a while, you've been hearing me say that starting with the November read, that was our first month where we might get better data, and it might start to help our situation. And then December, January, we're going to be kind of tough numbers to beat, but we could beat them. Well, we did beat them today. That's good. And because of that, now the inflation numbers have really started to recede, which means the Federal Reserve is going to kind of chill out a little bit in the near future. And that's going to be really good for us in a lot of ways. I'm going to show you a couple of those things. But this is that. I've shown you guys this once before. I think back in the summer we looked at it. This is the actual Bureau of Labor Statistics government website, which has all the inflation information on it. And what I want to show you is just kind of a breakdown of a few things. You still got food and energy running pretty hot, but they are coming down a little bit, which is good. In fact, I think we talked about last time, did anybody here try to renew their electricity bill yet? My dad did 3 of them like 3 months ago, and he went from 6, 7 cents to 18. And he's the cheapest person on the planet behind me, or right near me. So he searched everywhere, spent a week, and then still called me and asked if I'd done the research. I'm like, Dad, seriously, you have nothing to do but do this for a week. You think I've done more? And 18 was the best he got. So think of, let's put that into perspective. Your electricity bill's tripled. So he runs like a $400 to $500 electricity bill a couple times in the summer. That means next summer he will run a $1,500 potential.
No, you're saying that, when you said that increase, are you saying from a couple of months ago, or we just got another increase from last month? Because ours have already all doubled, right?
It's been continuously going up. Yeah, it was continuously going up till about October. So if you haven't renewed in a while, like I did mine on a 2 or 3 year contract, mine comes up in May. So I'm 2.5 years in, basically. So if you're more than a year in, you're paying some ridiculous rates. So again, now, little PSA though, don't forget you can cancel those contracts. It's like about a $200 penalty for backing out of it early. So he's watching it. He said they're already down to like 12, 13 cents, which is still double. So instead of $1,500 this summer, he'll probably run $1,000 for 3,500 square feet. That's relatively new and efficient. So can you even imagine? That's like a house for people. So that's what's coming. That's what we have on the horizon. And that's what some of this stuff is. That's what energy kind of represents to us. And then you have this all items less food. So let's talk a little bit about this. You have commodities, obviously they're up about 3.5%. Services, less energy services, doesn't really matter, but medical, transportation, and here's shelter. And the reason I wanted to show you guys this was because shelter is still the biggest component that's killing us on the inflation front. So I'm going to give you some data here in a minute, but what I want you to understand as we look at it is CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index. That's what you and I are paying in real time. That's what's driving the Federal Reserve right now. And 39% of the CPI is shelter. Shelter is rent and what they call owner's equivalent rent, which is what you and I pay at home. So if we had to rent our home, basically they look at and say, well, your mortgage payment is $2,000 a month, you're kind of renting it at $2,000 a month from yourself, is the way they calculate that. So let's just call it housing. Housing is 39% of the index. That's a massive number, right? And remember, these guys are always 60 plus days behind. So if they're 60 plus days behind, they still haven't felt the effects of prices coming down. Rent has just started coming down. And so all these things that you and I see on a daily basis, they're like, from an academic standpoint, just starting to realize that this is actually happening. And it's still not filtered into the index completely. And the numbers are already getting better. So imagine when 40% of the index comes down, i.e. shelter, how much better our numbers are going to be. And by the way, maybe that's part of what pushes us into recession. So I think we've already been in a recession, and that's just my opinion. We'll talk about that as well. But shelter is a big component of it. It's down to 7.1. That's good. We were obviously way double digits earlier this year, but we're still hot. And until that number comes down, what's the Fed's goal for, anybody remember what's their goal for inflation? 2 to 3%. So at 7%, you're still double, right? You're more than double what they want to be. So anyway, this is out there for you. I just wanted to share that with you guys. If you are bored one day, you want to go out and check it out. There's all kinds of cool stuff in there. You can see autos, you can see medical, healthcare, all kinds of stuff that's in there. So it's actually very helpful if you just want to know what's going on numbers-wise. All right, let's talk about our update here really quick. So we're going to jump in right now. So the good news continues. So here's the numbers we got today. So let me set you back up on this if you haven't been in all the classes. This is just a giant chart of numbers, but what it represents is this is the CPI, which includes food and energy. So this is everything added together. And this represents it on a monthly basis. So basically what happens is, let's just take 21 for an example. You add up all of these numbers and you come up with what the inflation was for all of 2021. So if it's 0.2 every month, you get a 2.4 number at the end of the year. That's your inflation rate is 2.4. Technically they add a little bit for compounding, it was probably 2.5 in that example. So what we care about though is we're taking out these numbers and adding these numbers in because it's a rolling 12-month average. So as I get, for instance, I have a 0.5 in the November reading for December, or for November of 21. Today, technically I put in a minus 0.1. That's really good. That's a lot less than 0.5, right? So that means that the average came down. I took a 0.5 out and put a minus 0.1 in, so it's a 0.6 difference, right? And that average number came down. In fact, it came from 7.7 to 7.1, which is really good. Now, one little side note. These numbers I'm showing you are not what they call seasonally adjusted. The news is going to show you seasonally adjusted, which is just their way of saying for this time of year it should slow down, so you have to add a factor to it. It's complete BS, just go with it. And it says 0.1. But this number also says like 0.6 or 0.7. So it's really the same. It doesn't matter. We still went down 0.6. So we've had, if you take a look at it, we were running 1.3, 8.9, and 1.1, 1.4. Then we went 0, 0, 0.2, 0.4, minus 0.1. Inflation's coming down, right? And what's going to happen is, as we take out some of these big numbers and put smaller numbers in here, the overall number is going to continue to fall. Now the problem we've got, and this is what I told you guys last time, is if you look at the November-December data, the 0.8 that we beat with the 0.4 last month, that was easy. That was low-hanging fruit. The 0.5 was a little tougher, and we killed it, which is really, really good. But now you got a 0.3. That's going to be harder to beat. So while everybody's super happy today, when we get to the December numbers, which will be mid-January, they may just be kind of, it's about flat. But nobody expected to go down 0.1 either. So if we do beat it, life's going to get even better. But here's what I care about. You start ramping back up as you get to, look at January of 22, 0.8, 0.9, 1.3. When we start getting to these numbers, if we continue on our current trajectory, inflation is going to come down super fast. And that matters to you and I for a whole lot of reasons. Not to mention, the biggest one being the Federal Reserve is raising rates to lower these inflation numbers. So as they come down, he's going to stop raising rates as much. So let's keep looking here. This is the minus food and energy one. The only reason I put this in there is just because you're going to hear about it on the news. This is actually the one the Fed watches. He doesn't watch the total one necessarily because food and energy is super volatile. So that goes up and down all the time. What he really cares about is the core of everything else minus food energy, and we went from 0.4 to 0.1. Again, seasonally unadjusted. The news number will say, I think, 0.2. They were expecting 0.3, so we still beat it, we're still good. But once we get back here, 0.7, 0.7, those are gonna be easier to beat. As we get easier to beat numbers, these numbers are gonna come down pretty quick. So overall, here's the final headline number for you, 7.1. So we went, let's go all the way back here. We peaked in June, right? So we're from 9.1 down to 7.1. We've dropped 2%. That's a lot. That's a huge, huge drop. And I think you're gonna see an equal drop as you start getting into these months down here for 23. Those numbers are gonna keep coming down pretty fast. Because as we start getting rid of the big ones and replace them with little ones, that 7.1 is gonna turn into 6.1 and 5.1 pretty quick. Here's the problem. It's still not 2 to 3, right? So what that means is they can kind of stop raising rates, but not lower rates. Everybody understand that? So it's good news because of a couple things I'm gonna show you here in just a minute. It's really good news that they stop. But as far as dropping rates, that's probably not gonna happen. The last thing I'll tell you about this is they think that they call the terminal rate, which is the rate they're gonna get up to and kind of hold. Right now, we are on our way, after tomorrow's meeting, we'll be at about 4.5. They think we need to be between 5 and 7. It's probably really 5, 5.25. The market thinks we're gonna be 5 to 5.25. So at that point, we've got maybe one more or two more hikes, smaller ones, and then they chill. And that's good for you and I. So, all right, let me show you how rates reacted. This is literally, I printed this morning at 10:30. So remember we talked about last time, this little chart, all it really means to you is if it's high, rates are high, because this is yield. So as rates, I'm sorry, it's low. As yields go up, rates come down. So we want to be like, right here's where we're at right this moment. You can see how high we were before. We dipped down to a little low down here right when we had the November readings come out, and then we bounced right back up right here. So today we had a huge reaction, but it's really just kind of flat. And so from a rate standpoint, we're like mid-sixes, is kind of where we're sitting. So the market had a really positive reaction initially. One thing I shared with you guys last time is these little tiny lines, this is how much movement you had during the day. Those are normally minuscule. Like you can't hardly see them normally in a real market, and look how big they are in this chart. So that tells you how volatile rates still are. So we're literally having repricing throughout the day, maybe 3 days a week, 4 days a week. Normally we have repricing in intraday, 3 times a month. So it's still incredibly volatile. You could still see a rate from 6.25 on a really cheap day to 7% on a really bad day. And until that chills out, mortgage rates are going to continue to stay in the news as being very, very high. All right, mortgage applications. We hit on this one last time. One thing I shared with you guys, this is where we stopped last time. And these are weekly numbers on how much mortgage applications are declining. And one thing I shared with you was that we were at a 27-year low a month ago for mortgage apps. So think about that. 27 years it's been since we've had this few number of buyers in the marketplace. That's why you're slow. That's why we're slow, is because of that right there. But look what happened literally the week after we met. Up 2.7, up 2.2. We've kind of had a little bit of a lull here recently, so we had a little bit of a pickup and now we're back down a little bit. My point to you guys is we're kind of flattening out a little bit. And that's good. We're not seeing the continued slide because for a while there we were dropping like a rock, right? And we were going out a lot. We're kind of chilling, which is a good thing. So we got to hit bottom and kind of stay there for a little bit before we bounce back up. And I think we're kind of getting there. Joe, what you got?
I wasn't born yet, so refresh me on what happened 27 years ago that there were slow apps.
You were born at a really good time, by the way.
I was.
27 years ago, you actually had a little bit of a recession in that period of time. You had a recession in 94, 95, and you picked up again at 97 to 99. There was some blips in there, including the big tech bomb that we had. But the biggest thing for you to realize about 27 years ago was the population in the United States was almost half of it is now. So when we start talking about mortgage apps, we're talking about, let's call it 60% as many people to create the same amount of apps as we have today. So when you really adjust it for time, we're significantly lower than we were back then. So, yes, sir.
Okay, so you said we're flattening out here, but you said mortgage rate's probably gonna increase, or the rate is probably gonna increase in the next couple of months as well.
Let's talk about that. Let's jump into rates for a
I'm
second.
just saying, what I heard you say was
Yeah.
that probably the Fed still is gonna keep raising, they're not gonna drop them.
Correct.
And I'm going like, well, if that's gonna go on, I gotta think it's gonna drop.
Well, here's the good news, and that is a really, really good point. And I've got something to show you that's gonna counterbalance that here right now. So let's talk about this. What's happening with mortgage rates? Because that is the big question of the day. So one thing everybody, and I really asked Ron to set me up on this. One thing that everybody, it's really hard for people to understand is that mortgage rates are typically tied to the 10-year treasury, but lately they've been disconnected. So what that means is they're not acting the way they should for a number of different reasons. So one of the things that we look at is called the spread. So what that is I know super technical, stay with me, is the difference between what the 10-year treasury is and what the actual interest rates are. So if the 10-year treasury is 2 and the rates are at 5, the spread is 3, okay? Is the easiest way to think about that. And that's how rates generally are done. Well, the problem is the spread is way out of whack right now. So this is the average spread since we started keeping track of this, so 30 plus years ago, 1.7%. So if the treasury yields were at 3, rates would be at 4.7. Does that make sense? Okay, that's what we've been at. Well, here's the problem, and by the way, this is just a quick chart to show you what the treasury yield has done. So this is going back to December of last year, we were down under 1.5, and we actually hit 4.25 in October. We're now down around 3.5. It's actually kind of trickled up a little bit this week, maybe 3.65, somewhere right around there. But the reason that's important is, number one, we think they've peaked. So you look at that peak right there, we think 10-year treasuries have peaked. If that's true, interest rates are probably going to follow. Here's the problem though. All right, if we had a normal spread from 3.49, this was again December 1st, we're a little higher than that right now, of the 1.79, mortgage rates would be at 5.28. But we've got this 3% monster going on over here instead, and rates are at 6.5. And so if we look at it and say, well, if we had a normal spread and 10-year treasury stayed somewhere around, by the way, this is actually the average of what you saw in 2000 and 2021. If we had a normal spread on top of our expected 10-year treasury right now at 3.7, we'd be at 5.5. But we're not, right? Well, the reason is because we have this fear factor baked in, which is just the market's way of saying we don't know when the Fed's going to stop raising rates, we don't know how bad the recession is going to be, and we don't know what's coming up. And the other problem is, as rates have gone up, the end buyers for mortgages don't want to pay 7% interest rates and buy these mortgages, because what are we telling every client who locked in at 7%? You're going to refi. 12 to 24 months from now, you're out of here. Well, the typical mortgage servicer needs anywhere from 2 to 4 years to get their money back. So if we are going to attack their book of business a year from now, they don't want to pay for it. So they add this fear factor. So this is the problem we have. This right here at 3 is the major reason we have rates still above 6. If we had the 5.5, do you think we'd have more buyers? Absolutely. They'd come back in a heartbeat, because 6 months ago when I said 5.5, and I actually showed this to somebody yesterday and they laughed, because I'm serious. 6 months ago when I told somebody I had a 5 rate, the guy told me I needed to go back to my manager and sharpen my pencil. And I was like, I'm not a car dealer, dude. It doesn't work this way. And then I hung up. But, so, 5.5 though, after 7.5, is gonna feel like you hit the lottery. And they're gonna come back. And now they're gonna be like, oh, y'all are awesome. I didn't think I'd ever get a 5.5. And it's gonna be a completely different conversation. So, I want this to go away. Well, this is going to go away when the market feels like the Fed is 6 months out from stopping their rate assault. Because interest rates are a 6-month forward-looking vehicle. So right now, we're doing everything based on where we think the market will be 6 months from now. That's the way the bond market works and the stock market works as well. So the question is this: when's the Fed going to stop? Well, if the terminal rate's 5-ish, they're going to be there. So they have a meeting tomorrow. They're going to go to 4.5. The next meeting, they're going to go up a quarter, which is going to be the end of January. And then 6 weeks after that, which will be the early part of March, they're supposed to go up another quarter, is what the world thinks is going to happen. Then they think they're done. Now, that's data dependent, so obviously if something weird happens, they can continue to rise. But if that's true, that means they'll be finished at the end of Q1, which means we're 6 months out now, right? So what we think as an industry is that the bond market's been waiting for this spread to come down. It's been waiting for, A, are we 6 months away from the Fed stopping their interest rate increases? Now, they don't have to go down, they just need them to stop. And B, are we at a point where we feel like that the mortgage market and the volatility's chilled out enough that we can get back to a real spread? And if we do, you're gonna see rates drop overnight. Like you are literally, the way this is gonna happen, you were gonna wake up on a Monday and by Friday, rates will have dropped a point. Because every day the spread will come down. And the market can stay where it's at. The bond market can stay at 3.5. I'll still get, if it stays at 3.5, I'll still get down to 5.5 or 5.25. And then we'll feel pretty good.
And you're thinking that after the first quarter?
Yeah.
Sure, they're up.
Yeah. In fact, one of the guys that I watch, there's a guy, you probably see him on CNBC a little bit. His name is Barry Habib. Barry's a great guy. I've known Barry for 20 plus years when he was a loan officer at CTX Mortgage. And it still kind of cracks me up that he's now one of the industry experts when it comes to rates and mortgage pricing and so forth. But he's done a really great job over 20 years of building this business. And he operates what's called MBS Highway. And MBS Highway is basically just everything financial in the mortgage business. And he's a great prognosticator. So over the last 10 years, Barry's been right more than anybody else. NAR, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, doesn't matter. Barry's hit it all the time. And Barry's been saying literally for 3 months now that as you see, so as the inflation comparisons come down, which we're seeing right now, right, we're already coming down, that you'll start to see rates move much lower. He thinks that we'd be at 5 or maybe even below 5 by the middle of next year. He's been pretty accurate. Now, I'm not gonna prognosticate 4. Like that just 4.99 seems too low to me right now, but I think we're gonna see a 5 something for sure in the second quarter. So that's somewhere between April 1 and June 1st. So that's what I think is happening. Now, what happens when rates go into the 5s? Buyers come back, which means that the party's over if you were a buyer, right? Because we still don't have the inventory. So we're gonna talk about that here in a minute. So we've got some things we gotta kind of get out there to our buyers right now. So let's start talking about what's in the news and some of the stuff we need to start telling people and making sure they understand. So number one, Diana Olick, who is kind of public enemy number 1 in the mortgage space. You guys ever listen to her on CNBC? Or you see her reports, even if you don't watch it happen in real time, because they quote her out on MSN and the Wall Street Journal and the local news, and they go, CNBC says, or the financial news say, well, they're talking about Diana Olick. Diana Olick just reads some headline news and spits it back out. So she's the first person to say the sky is falling and it's raining when you're already in the middle of a tornado. So she drives everybody bonkers. Well, this is a great example of one of her reports. So she had a huge, I actually saw this story live. Homeowners have lost $1.5 trillion in equity. It's one of the worst collapses since the Great Recession in equity. That's true. However, we were at $9.9 billion at the end of 21, and we were down here in 2019 like at, I don't know, 6 or 7 billion in equity, trillion in equity, and look where we're at 10.3. Yeah, we've lost some equity, but is that really that bad? Our homes are still worth 40% more than they were 3 years ago. So the context of it is kind of interesting to me. So we're 400 million just above the end of last year. That's a lot. So contextually, we have to kind of see what's going on out there and make sure that our buyers understand this is not 100% true. So, all right, second thing is, so we've got tons of tappable equity. Are we going to have any foreclosure issues? The answer is no, because we have all this equity. We've talked about this before, right? If you have a neighbor and they know that you're a realtor, what's the likelihood they get foreclosed on? It's 0, because they're going to, well, maybe 0 after February. I mean, I don't know how long it takes the buyers to come back, but it's generally 0, because even in this market, if you go list the property and put it in for 50 grand on a market, you'll sell it in 3 days, right? So you should not, and they have so much equity, they can give up 30 or 40 or 50 grand and still come out with a giant check. They shouldn't go into foreclosure. So to that point, part of what we're saying, I'll show you some foreclosure data in a minute, we're still at historically low foreclosure rate. Historically low. All right, so the other one that came out, and I saw this one happen in real time also, was the whole credit card usage. This has been really floating around out there. So household debt is increasing at its fastest pace in 15 years. Okay, so let's look at it. That's true. This is the average credit card balance for each American. So right now we're at $32.83, but look where we were back at the end of 2019. We didn't have a pandemic, and we weren't saying we were financially stressed in, were we? And you can see we actually hit $33.91. So are we going up? Yes. Part of the reason we're going up is because we hit this low down here, which was stupid low. Why did we hit that? Why was it that the average American didn't have a lot of credit card debt during the pandemic?
They weren't going anywhere.
The government was sending them money to pay it off.
Exactly. Both of those things. We just printed money. We went from like 15 trillion in money supply to 22 trillion in money supply. So we gave you all this money and you didn't go anywhere because we locked you down. And so we hit way down here. So yeah, we're going back up. And to be fair, we're going up because of what the Fed is doing, because people now, they're pulling money out of the money supply. So I think the last data I saw was we're down somewhere right around 20 trillion. So we've gone from 22 to 20, 19 and change, and they want us to be down to 15 or 16. So we still have more to go. I think the thing I saw said we'll be there in April of next year. So we'll be back to the 2019 money supply in April, which is in 4 months. So that is part of what's killed us on the inflation front, because you've had all these dollars chasing these small amount of goods. And when you have too many dollars chasing too few goods, you have inflation. So if we're gonna be back to the normal dollar number in April, and inflation's already coming down, where are we gonna be in May and June from an inflation standpoint? Probably pretty good, because we don't have too few dollars chasing too many goods, or too many dollars chasing too few goods. So yes, it's going up, but we're just right back to where we were. And by the way, if we always go up this time of year, look at this one, Q3 to Q4, why did we go up? It's Christmas. We're spending money we don't have. So this is a normal track, and the news is all over it right now. So is it showing that the economy's heading in a different direction? Yes, for sure. People don't have the cash to spend, they're putting it on a credit card. Is it normal? Yes, it's also normal. Okay, so this is the other one. So delinquency rates. Everybody keeps talking about delinquencies and foreclosures, and are we gonna be in trouble from people who can't afford their homes anymore? Well, two things on this. So number one, this is what they call the mortgage debt to income ratio. Now this is a little misleading because it's for the whole country. And you may remember from one of our previous classes, how many homes, what's the percentage of homes that are owned free and clear in the United States? You may remember?
40%.
60.
60?
60% of homes are owned free and clear in the United States. Do you know where all these people are? I haven't met them. So, but apparently there's a lot. There's a whole lot. Way more than half of all homes in the United States are owned free and clear. So this is a little misleading, because this is not your debt to income ratio if you actually have a mortgage. This is your debt to income ratio for the entire country based on what your housing payment is versus what we all earn. And it hit a peak of 7.2% back before the Great Recession. That may be a reason why we hit the Great Recession. And look, today we're at 3.9. Now, yes, this does not apply to everybody, because if you have a mortgage, your debt to income ratio is a lot higher than this. Your housing payment's a lot more than 4%. In fact, we've shown you that it's about 25% of your income is your house payment, which is ridiculously high. But as a country, we're not in that much trouble if we're less than 4, and historically you can see that we've ranged probably around 5.5. We're fine. It's just a global number to say the country's not in that much debt from a mortgage standpoint. So I don't know that I fully buy into how important it is to us, but it is when you look at the context of the Great Recession, we're a lot better than we were. So from that standpoint, I don't think you're going to see massive foreclosures. In fact, when you look at the foreclosure activity we have, we're currently at about 3.5% of all homes are in distress right now. That is literally an all-time low. And if you look at our foreclosures, this is through the first 3 quarters of 2022. There's been 88,000 foreclosures in the United States. Well, take these 2 years out, because Uncle Sam stopped us, and go to here. We were at 278 in 2019, and we thought that was the lowest we would ever see. This year we'll probably end up at about 110. So there are no foreclosures. By the way, that's not going to help our inventory situation, because they're not coming. And then you look back here, we're at 2 million back in these days, right? So when people say, hey, the market's going to go down because we're going to have a lot of foreclosures, you're going to go, no, it's not. Because about 100,000 people lost their homes this year. And by the way, 100,000 people lose their homes because they die. You can't stop that. That has nothing to do with a recession. But literally, normal should be probably in this range. If you look back here, we thought this was normal. We were in the 700 to 800,000. So foreclosures are not coming to save the day.
Do you think maybe because of trends, let's talk about the people who are aging out?
Yep.
At the older spectrum, and then they have huge medical issues, and they are losing their homes because of medical bills.
Some of them are, potentially. Yeah, I mean, generally right now what we're seeing is something catastrophic happen to somebody to lose their home. We're not seeing the standard, I got in over my head, there was no arms to adjust on them. We're not even really seeing the I lost my job issue, because so many people have so much cash and they have full employment, by the way. So what we're seeing is somebody died, somebody had something catastrophic like what you're talking about, maybe a business went bankrupt, something along those lines. But that's all we're seeing in the foreclosure space. No foreclosures. In fact, I wish Ian was in here. Ian was sharing this last month. There was like one foreclosure that popped up in Keller in the month of October, and it was a feeding frenzy to get to it. So that's what we're seeing. All right, the reason I wanted this quote in here, I left in here, is because it doesn't really, I mean, it sets the context, but it's not really earth shattering. This is Jerome Powell. This is the guy who runs the Fed. This is the guy who's making the decisions on what we're doing right now. And this is what he's talking about. These are his words. We need to get back to a place where supply and demand are back together. This is for homeowners. When inflation is low again and mortgage rates are low again, and we need a bit of a reset, right? If you're looking to buy a home, you need a bit of a reset. This is the mentality that's going on in Washington right now. This is what we need to understand is why they're driving us down so much. We'll see you later on. Thank you. Sorry. So if you understand these coming after you, then you understand kind of what's going on going forward. So let's talk a little bit about what we think is going to happen in 23 because of that. So number one, just to kind of set the stage, this year's been all about interest rates. This is the reason why we are where we are. This is what he's been doing on purpose to us. This is okay, but you know what happened from down here? We were stupid busy, couldn't keep up. And over here, we have no money. We're just poor, right? What happens when this reverses? And when will it reverse? Now, it's going to kind of tilt this way for 23, and then it's going to go this way for 24. What's going to happen in 24? Bonkers. Like, we got to get ready for bonkers. Say what, Joe? Can't keep up? We're going to drink a lot of bourbon?
I've started already.
True, it's just going to be the nicer bourbon, because we've traded down right now. So we're the cheap stuff. We're going back to Garrison Brothers in 24. Okay, so where do we think interest rates are going to go? Let's talk about kind of 23 forecasts. So number one, this is, so you got Freddie, Fannie, MBA, which is us, NAR, which is you guys, average of all four. These guys have missed on every single thing that they've told us is going to happen as far as rates go, so I don't really put a lot of stock into these guys. They think we're going to be 6, 6.2, 6.3, 6.5 for the whole year. I don't think so. I think you're going to get in the 5s. We've talked about why you're going to get in the 5s. If the market was just running the way it normally runs, we'd already be in the 5s. So I think this is too high, but this is what they're telling the world. When we talk to our buyers, we're going to talk about rates being lower than that ultimately. But the one thing I will say is consistent, and I do think that they're probably right about. In fact, the MBA, to be fair, the MBA's been the most accurate of these guys. They've been kind of spot on. Look what they're seeing, 6.2, 5.6, 5.4, 5.2. That's kind of what I think is going to happen too. I think they're right. I think Fannie and Freddie are wrong, and I think NAR is wrong. But even look at NAR, 6.5, 6.4, 6.3, 6.1. They just took the chicken road out and just said, we're just going to drop a little bit every quarter, but not by a lot. But it's all coming down, right? That's what everybody expects. And they're going to be right about that. Every single one of these guys is coming down. And we think that's going to be accurate. So that's what we're thinking on the rate side of things. Now, home sales this year, we're going to hit 5.8 million units for the year. Now keep in mind, 5.8 million includes all existing, all new construction, and multifamily, okay? Not multifamily 4 units or less. So that feels like a pretty big number, but you can see for the year, we're down below where we were. In fact, to get to 5.8, we got to go all the way down to 2015. So we got to get to 2015 to have a same market that we had this year, which is a long ways back, right? But reading between the data, it's really front-loaded, because what did we do for the first 5 months of the year? Were we bonkers? Like through May? We couldn't keep up. And what have we been doing since May? Kind of twiddling thumbs, right? So, to be honest with you, we don't feel like 5.8. In fact, we're running at a 4.2 clip right now. 4.2, 4.3. So we're way below that. And what I want to share with you before I get to that slide is look back here historically. How many times have we ended the year in the 4s? We haven't, except for the Great Recession. 4.6, 4.7, 4.5, 4.6. But look at all the ones prior to that and then look since. So if we're running at a 4.2 or 4.3 rate, does that tell you we might be at the bottom? I think it does, because we haven't been there before. I wish this chart went back prior to 99, but we were, you could tell, we were way above 4s back in the 90s. And we didn't have as many people. So here's what everybody thinks is going to happen next year. They think we're going to run at 5.1. Now, that may scare you, because you go, well, I just came out of 5.8. Now I'm going to run 5.1. That's pretty low. But remember I just said we've been running at a 4.3 rate right now? That would be more than we're doing today. And it'll be spread out amongst the whole 12 months. So it's not like it's all going to be front-loaded and then dead. So I think we'll feel better. I don't think you're going to get rich, but I think you'll be able to pay the bills. And if you look at the NBA, they're the ones that have been the most accurate on this. And NAR's been pretty close on this number too. They're at 5.3 and 5.4. That's not bad. 5.3, 5.4 means you're gonna run at almost the same clip you had for this entire year, but instead of being bonkers for 5 months and dead for 7, you'll be rolled down to 12. I would take that, to be honest with you. I'm okay with that, because in a transition year where we've gone from bonkers market to a normal market, that's a pretty good number. So that's what we're thinking in 2023. I think it's this 5.3, 5.4. That's kind of what the guys we're reading say. I think Fannie and Freddie are too low on their predictions. All right, let's talk a little bit about, and by the way, this is the chief economist for NAR. I always don't leave his quotes in here because obviously this is you guys, this is what y'all's official body thinks. So these guys are talking about how they think there's a return of buyers coming back when mortgage rates go down. That's 100% right, y'all agree with that, right? Rates go down to 5.99, you're gonna see buyers come back in. So what's gonna happen when home prices, when the buyers come back in? Well, we saw this last month, and these numbers have kind of chilled out a little bit. Prior to this, everybody kept saying we're gonna have really heavy home appreciation. But last month, everybody started to kind of get back on board with maybe not so much. So I think, a couple of quick things. Realtor.com is the outlier, and so is Zelman. Zelman is just an economic think tank, a bunch of economists. They think we're gonna actually lose 5% value next year. I don't see that necessarily happening. But I'll throw an asterisk, depends on the recession piece. Because if we do hit full-on recession, most of the stuff we've read say this number could be 10% if we hit full-on recession. I get that. I don't know that we're gonna see that because of employment. We'll talk about that in a minute. So Fannie and Freddie, who are usually in MBA and NAR, all pretty close, 1.2 to maybe a loss of 1.5. That will be nationwide. Are we gonna lose that in Texas? Probably not, right? Because we have a bunch of people still moving here. We have a lot of people coming into Texas. So I don't think you're gonna see that you see a big decline in Texas. This is the home price expectation survey. This is a whole bunch of people that they think are important. So the presidents and CEOs of all the big banks, Citi and Bank of America and Chase and all those guys fall under this camp. A whole bunch of economists, a bunch of government think tank guys, they all fall under this HPES. And then you have Realtor.com who's way out on them. I don't see 5%. I don't think that's gonna happen necessarily. But I do think you're probably gonna run somewhere in this range right here. Is kind of what we're expecting. So if you're talking to sellers, the conversation is, hey, if you're gonna move and get out of here, now's not a bad time to sell because you're probably gonna see stagnant pricing for the rest of the year or maybe even a slight decline. If you're talking to buyers, the conversation is now is actually a pretty good time to buy because we're not expecting a big decrease in sales prices, right? So if we get the word out a little bit, I think people will come back in the marketplace, but we're not expecting big movement, not like 2008, for sure. All right, let's talk about, Here's the other thing we have to consider too, is there's still no inventory. So no matter what we do in the mortgage space, if the rates come down a little bit and it activates buyers again, you're back to having no inventory, which means sellers are gonna be in total command. So if you're talking to a buyer right now, the conversation I'll be having is, do you wanna wait and get in the middle of the horde of people coming when the rates hit the 5s, or do you wanna try and get out there right now and be one of 2 people negotiating on a home? And the answer is, I think you wanna be 1 of 2. You don't wanna be 1 of 22, right? So that's a big thing that we're really pushing for people right now, is there's still no supply. If there's no supply, prices simply can't come down that much. All right, let's get to some data on what's happened here in the last months since we last spoke. So number 1, average days on market up to 21 for homes that have sold. Now, what happens, we mentioned this last time, hopefully you guys remember it. What happens if you're not in the 21 days? How long does it take you to sell your home? Do you remember? That's a trick question, because the answer is you don't. You literally don't sell. If it's priced right and it's not a piece of junk, you'll sell it in 21 days. If it doesn't meet those criteria, you will get to keep it forever. That's what's going on in the market. So we just don't have enough buyers for it, right? Technically, the average home that's listed that is not sold is now on market like 75 days. It's a big number, right? You guys are seeing that. In fact, I really wish he was here because he's always into the MLS. You guys could give me, does anybody know what the MLS data shows right now? He pulled it up for me last time. Last time it was right under 60. So we've crept up another week to 2 weeks. So in 21 days, you're gone if you did everything right. If you didn't do anything right, you're probably just still sitting there. Existing home sales, this is where we're at. This is the latest data, which is through October. And you see that we're somewhere right around 4.4, but most of the estimates are showing November to be around 4.1. Remember I showed you a minute ago that when we get in, we've only been in the 4s for consecutive years during the Great Recession. So that tells you how far down we are, which is another reason why I think we're kind of at our bottom. And technically, if you look at it, the only time we've been lower than this in this chart, which is back to 2014, is when we shut the world down for the pandemic. Of course, I mean, and it was only a blip, right? It was literally like 60 days. It was crazy. It wasn't even that long. So we haven't been that low. Now, let's talk about what's going on region over region. So we're still, this is last month's numbers. This is this month's numbers. We're in the south. So we are down existing home sales from November to November, actually this is October. October to October, down 27%. Well, last month it was down 24. So we're still going down more, right? We're still dropping. And if you look at the West Coast, these are the guys that always kind of lead the charge. They're down 37, they were down 31 last month. So we're continuing to go down even further. So again, I think we're putting a bottom in right this moment. But it's still kind of hurting a little bit. Nationwide off 28 versus 23 the month before. So we're moving in the wrong direction for sure. We just are getting to the point where we're so low, it's almost at that ridiculous level, right? Like you can't go lower, you can get to 3.9. In fact, I looked at the research, I don't think we've been at 3.9 in like 30 years. 3.9 million homes sold. So I don't know that that's coming. So existing home sales, and you can kind of see it in this chart how much we've been coming down. We noticed it. Here was our first blip in July. We kind of survived August because the school's starting, and then we've just been on a train down. So again, this is that whole front-loaded thing that we talked about. It really technically kind of ended in June, but you sold those homes in May. They just closed in June, and that's why we've seen it really be slow. All right, new home sales, still doing the same thing. One thing that we noticed with the builders, in fact, I'll always leave this in there just to kind of show you what they're doing. They are still offering a lot of incentives, and you saw this with this giant pickup right here. Look, they've been coming down since the first part of the year. They shot up because they offered those incentives. They're still doing those, right? You're still seeing that? The problem is they're coming up on running out of inventory. So at some point, the buyers aren't going to be able to go out and get new construction, and the builders are not buying, they're not starting new constructions right now. In fact, you guys saw the news story that was out last month about D.R. Horton, I think it was. They let $34 million worth of land go. Let me rephrase that. They had $34 million worth of earnest money on land they were going to buy, and they said, y'all just keep it. We're not going to buy it. Now, there's a little bit more to that story. That part's true, and that is definitely indicative of what's going on. But what they also did was they turned around and renegotiated on other land to buy cheaper.
Okay.
So they're going to come back around. But they still let way more go than what they picked up. So the builders are not planning on continuing to build at the same pace. And did y'all see the Lennar story this week? I think it was out yesterday. Y'all are shaking your head. What was the Lennar story? What'd they do?
About trying to sell to institutional? Is that what you're talking about?
Investors in general, yeah, and institutional guys. So they are now saying, hey, we'll sell our inventory to investors. Come on, including institutional investors. Just come get it, because they're so afraid that they're going to be stuck with it. So,
But they still are saying just 1%.
Lennar's at 1% for you guys?
They have been.
I mean,
Shame on
they
you.
have
That's ridiculous.
the only affordable-ish housing that you, if you want something under 300, is still all the way out there near Eagle Mountain.
Yeah.
And so they're on my email stuff, and I'm like, they still, like, they pop up for some of my clients, and it's like, but you're still 1%. I mean, they go under contract really quick, so, because they're all at 260, they were at 265-ish.
Yeah.
But everything still says 1%, even after all of this, they're still, I mean, have y'all seen anything different?
I go out there and Express Homes, which is D.R. Horton, they'll pay 5%. Give you
Exactly.
a washer, dryer, and refrigerator,
Because I
Oh,
just.
and they drop the price?
and come off the price.
And come off the price, there you go. So, and come off the price, it's crazy. So, but, to be fair, they're killing land deals, they're picking up some other stuff a little bit cheaper, but they're gonna be way behind schedule on the development on that newer stuff, right? It's still gonna go through the cities and the counties and all that, that's gonna take a little while. So, again, the new construction guys aren't coming to save the day at this point. Flip over to this pending home sales page. This is the other one I want to keep showing you guys. This one is going to turn here pretty quick. This is contracts written, coming up for closing. And look at literally where we are at. This goes back to 2012, and we've only had one spot where we've ever been lower than this. This 100 means nothing. This is a magical number. I think they said, I can't remember, I think it's like 1990, based on what they consider to be a healthy pending home sales market going back to 1990. That's 100. If you're above it, then pending home sales are off the charts. And if you're below it, then we're where we are today. And if you look at it, we've only had one time that it's ever run this low. So pending home sales, existing home sales running hand in hand. And literally the only time you can point to them being this low was when we shut the whole world down. So that's why I really believe you're seeing the bottom. Like, the next 90 days is the bottom. And really, it's probably the next 60 days. But look where we're at. I mean, nobody thought we'd get here. I remember we were talking back here and everybody thought, ooh, that's a good sign that we're just down to this number. And it's like 78 or something is what it is out of 100. So it's really, really, really low. And you can look at it and see, the West is actually down 46%. Here's us, here's all I care about. We're down 38% year over year. Does it feel like your business is off 40%? Mine is, for certain. And that's what we're seeing. So, and we were only off 30% last month, so does it feel like we're still getting worse? The answer is yes. But what normally happens after we come back from January 1st in a regular market? I know it's been a while, so think about that, how long back that was. What normally happens on like January 3rd, 4th, like the first weekend of January?
People start putting their houses on the market.
Yeah, I started getting phone calls. I'm like, stop it, I just want to watch bowl games. That's what happens. Like, I'm still drunk, I haven't shaved in forever, and I'm going to close in 2 weeks. That's what's going to happen, and they're going to want to talk about pre-approvals and be like, everybody gets 2.9. So I think that's what's coming. Now, normally that happens, and then you kind of chill out going into February. And then we feel bad about ourselves again, so we eat our way through it, and then we feel good again in March, and it's time to get ready for summer. So, but we're still getting worse. All right, that's the bad news. But I do think you're at the bottom. I really do think you're gonna see. Now, will these numbers, will the contracts and the pending home sales pick up next month? Probably not, because we don't have any buyers getting pre-approved. So it's probably gonna be March. Our motto in our office is make it to March. And it's funny, I talked to a buddy of mine on the other side of the country the other day, and he goes, yeah, we were running around saying make it through March. I'm like, well, y'all are maybe a little less optimistic than I am. I just think we need to make it to March. But I thought it was interesting that they're saying the same thing. He's over in Florida, so. All right, let's talk about distress sales. You know, last month we showed you guys this little blip up, and everybody went, ooh, maybe we're gonna get lucky. Well, now it's already coming back down. So it was a blip. Who knows what happened? But there's nothing going on, and we've talked about that already, so we'll run past that. All right, now we talked sales prices, and we're getting close to being done, I promise, so y'all hang in with me. First of all, I've done a bad job of telling you guys this in the past. There's two sources that talk about sales price improvement, and that is NAR and CoreLogic, and they are both in different categories for what their numbers are. And it's because of how they do it. So NAR is a little bit more global across the entire country, whereas CoreLogic is a little bit more special or specific to certain markets and like their top 20 market in particular. So the NAR number, which is us basically, right? You guys and us, they're running 6.6% on increase in home value, and that number's been consistently coming down. Last month it was at 8.4, so we came down another 2% in the course of 1 month. So our sales prices coming down? Yes, they are. Now, what I've been saying to people is the listing prices that were ridiculous have come down. I'm not sure that the sales prices themselves are coming down that fast, but the listing prices certainly are. And you see the South is still high, so we're holding on better than other parts of the country. So 6.6% for those guys. Now here's the CoreLogic. You hear them referred to as S&P Case-Shiller and the CoreLogic guys. This is what they've been doing. We were peaked at 21%, we were at 10.4, October was 10.1. So the interesting thing is, in there, this is their 20 city composite, so they take the 20 biggest markets across the United States, DFW is included in that, and they roll out these numbers. So if you look at those markets, we're starting to chill out a little bit. You see we went from 18.7 to 16, so we lost almost 3, we lost almost another 3, we lost another 2.5, and now we only lost 0.3. That might mean that prices are kind of chilling. What do you guys see from a listing standpoint? Are you still having to bring listing prices down on all of your appointments, or are you starting to kind of bottom out a little bit?
Some, not all of it.
Some, but not all of them. And it's going to be market dependent. That's one thing that I believe 100%. So there's going to be areas of town, like Lennar building 260, they're not going to have to worry about it. They'll have so many buyers they can't see straight. But if you're in South Lake and your average sales price is $1.1 million, you have some room to come down, right? So it's going to be a little bit dependent on where you're at. Housing inventory, thank goodness, last month was a blip. So up until last month, we've been increasing just a little bit each month, and then last month all of a sudden we lost a little bit of inventory, which is really bad, because if the inventory stays low, when these rates pop into the 5s, we're gonna be back in the middle of the circus again, right? So not major, in fact for the nation we're kind of flat, but we're up 2%, that's what I care about. We're at least moving in the right direction. We want that number to go up. Y'all want that number to go up, right? That's your listing count. So for the office, how are the listings doing for the office? I haven't heard Dustin say that.
Not very well.
Not very good. Yeah, that's our major problem. To be honest with you, everything, in my opinion, is moving towards a complete healing of where we need to be, and we're gonna be great, and it'll be fine in 23-ish and into 24, except this number right here, I'm kinda scared of. So, because if you don't have inventory, you don't have anything to sell. Now, to be fair, part of what's keeping this number at these lower levels is because 90% of all mortgages are at or below 6% on interest rate. You guys realize that? 90+%. I think it's like 92. It's a ridiculous number. So that means that everybody who could sell a home is looking around going, well, I could sell my house, but I gotta go from 3.5 to 6.5. I'll stay put. So to be fair, we probably need rates to bounce on down a little bit. You have to get to that zone where they don't feel like it's quite as bad. And I don't know where that's at. I think 5 for certain, 5 even. I think they'd be there. 4.99, I think they'd be all over. I think 5.5 maybe brings them out. But until then, inventory's not gonna pick up a whole lot. That's my fear. Look at the places that have been crazy skyrocketing values like Florida, their inventory is starting to go up a little bit, which is good. Florida's been off the charts crazy. In fact, they still have, I think, 3 of the 4 fastest growing metros in the United States. Like Miami, Tampa, and there's another little spot in there too. So they're starting to maybe start to see a little inventory, which will help. All right, months of inventory only at 3.3. That's because we don't have any sales. So inventory's not going up, sales aren't going up. We're still hanging out in the 3s. We've talked about before, 4 to 6 is the norm now. 4 is the new 6, basically. So if we get to 4 months, we'll be even. And this is kind of your inventory chart. This is the one that I still like to show to buyers when they ask me, well, you know, we'll have more inventory coming on, and so prices are going to go down, right? You go, well, not really, because if you look all the way back for the last 11 years, look how the inventory trend line has been going down. And all these peaks and valleys are just seasonal. It's when we go into the buying season and when we get into the winter, literally like clockwork. So is this peak going up a little bit more? Yes, it is. In fact, it's going up a little bit faster like it was at the early part of the pandemic. But the trend line is still going the wrong direction. So there's still no housing. You're still not going to see home prices go down materially. And this one I leave in there just to pick on the builders and to make sure you guys understand. While the builders say they have 8.9 months of inventory, and I love it because I can't stand them, I wish they had like 80 months of inventory and didn't sell anything. Those are under construction too. So in reality, they have less than a month's worth of inventory to sell. So they're complaining and they're whining, they're killing inventory, but they don't have anything to sell. And what little they do, they're getting rid of pretty fast. All right, and then we're almost done. 2 or 3 more slides. So buyer demand, we've already talked about this, so not a big surprise. We saw, this is showings, okay? Showings were down 50% in the West, year over year. You were down 34. Can you believe that? That's what, you guys come to my office every day and go, I have a listing, and it has had 1 showing in 3 weeks. And my favorite part is the other agent won't give you feedback. They don't have anything to do. So now, you know, and last month we were down 27 and 44, so the buyers are still backing out of the market. My deal to you, same thing I've been telling myself, is it's the holidays, lean into it, enjoy it, because I think that's going to change a little bit. But it still hurts when you're down 30, 40, 50% on showings. Like that just tells you how ridiculous the timing is right now. In fact, 5 years from now, you guys are going to be talking to the new realtors and going, y'all should have been here in 2022 when it was retarded and we did blah, blah, blah. Okay. All right.
I remember when you had the listing for 6 months and you were still calling your seller and telling them why.
Exactly right. And by the way, that's a really great point, Johnny. So, and as a PSA to everybody, so in a real market, you have to keep your seller up to date on what's going on, right? And show them the stats. If you don't, you're going to get fired. You all understand that, right? So please, please, please share the info with them and let them know what's going on, because otherwise they're going to think it's you. And they're probably going to think that anyway, because it's never me, it's always you. So, but that's what you got to make sure everybody knows. We talked about mortgage rates, so I don't want to hit that too much here. This is that final number that we talked a little bit about. But then the last thing for you guys is, and then we're done for the day, is mortgage credit availability. This doesn't mean anything other than to say we're still stupid tight on our underwriting guidelines. We don't have any mortgage problems. We have no mortgage meltdown coming. And in fact, mortgage availability is actually at basically an all-time low back through the Great Recession. So, number one, we're not getting ourselves in trouble, and nobody's coming with a bunch of foreclosures and whatnot. And it is a little bit harder for people to qualify right now. It's mostly harder for them to qualify because rates are so high. So as rates come down, that number will get better for us. So, all right, guys, that's what I got for you today. What questions can I answer for you guys? have something, right?
Are you seeing a lot of people do buy downs?
Yes, yes, we're getting a lot of requests for buy downs. So still the 2-1 buy down is a big deal right now. The ARM is still a big request right this moment, but the ARMs aren't priced very well, so we're not able to sell them all now. And the investment properties, we're starting to get investors who are calling us, which is maybe a good sign for the market. They can't do ARMs, so unfortunately, they can't participate in that. They gotta do 30-year fixed.
Investor loan, what kind of rate are they looking at?
Oh, 7.75, 7.875. So, I think I called me last night, he got quoted by EECU, 7.875 with no points. And I was running 7 5/8 for like half a point.
So say investors cannot do arm, okay.
They cannot do ARMs, not the well-priced ARMs. In fact, their ARM rates for them are the same as the fixed rates, so we just don't put them on it. Yeah. What else you guys think? Yes, sir.
So my sister called me the other night, and she had heard a story on the news about how all these people had bought in the last year or so that overpaid so much, $100,000 over list and everything, how now all of a sudden they find themselves underwater.
Yep.
And so that story went on to say that people were already starting to walk away and so on and so forth. But then we see that distressed properties are way down and everything.
Yeah.
So if someone agreed in the last year to pay so much more than they should have,
Yeah.
but yet they can afford to pay their mortgage,
Yeah.
then there's really not a problem, right?
They're fine. And the thing is, it's gonna come back, right? I mean, now, it may take a while to get back to the exorbitant prices we paid in the early part of this year, right? Because if you think about it, we were paying 50 to 100 grand over appraisal. That's a big number. And from a valuation standpoint, the appraisals were based on what else had sold in the area. So you were still paying way over market. And I think that's what that's referring to, is the people who paid way over appraisal. Those guys are gonna take maybe 4 to 5 years to get the money back, for sure.
A lot of
They're not
that
getting
money
back next
came
year.
out of a property they sold somewhere else, way over
Right.
what our home prices are here.
I had a VA client that paid 70K over appraisal,
Hmm.
which you don't normally think of a VA being able to do that. But he came out of California and they said, well, we'll pay, they were putting a bunch of money down anyway, I think like 250. But to their point, he said, we just made 100 grand more on our home than we thought even when we listed it. So we'll pay the $70,000 difference here. He's
Just
probably gonna get his money back.
flopping money around.
Yeah, he was playing with funny money.
Are you starting to see more appraisal issues?
I'm just now starting to see them. That's a really good question. We've been really good up to this point because we all had to bring our prices down to sell them. And to be fair, the prices are still coming down. We're still seeing contracts come in under list and with seller concessions. But there's now enough data from sales in September and October and even November that the comps are coming down as well. And so the valuations are starting to
We're
slide.
finally back to evening it out, it's just like how crazy it was
Yeah.
the first quarter of last year. It's just,
Yeah.
we took forever to do this, now we just need enough numbers to do this.
Right.
Making it easier to do comps now that we've had enough time.
Oh, yeah, and you're more accurate now. And I'll tell you this, if you comp a home and you go more than 90 days back, you're probably gonna be wrong.
The problem is you can't find enough comps that are less than 90 days.
That's the issue we're running into. And the sellers are starting to, the appraisers are starting to make negative adjustments for time, whereas before they were making positive adjustments for time. So now they figured it out as well, and they're not pushing anything. So you're definitely seeing that.
And I
Most of
think
the
that-
sellers I've talked to have seemed to be pretty savvy about what's going on. And they're, if you tell them, I mean, they understand that you're not gonna get as much as you would've got,
Yeah.
3 months ago. Well, they've heard it all in the media, I mean, but you gotta tell them, and they'll make those adjustments.
We're seeing the buyers be pretty savvy right now too. The phone calls we're getting, the few that we're getting, the conversation is, hey, I know rates are high, but I'll just refi later. So we're starting to get, I feel like the mentality is starting to get past the sticker shock of where we're at rate-wise, which is good for us in the long run. But I mean, we're still extremely high on price point. I mean, to your point, you're even like, Watauga's still $200 a foot, guys. How many of you have bought a home in Watauga for $80 a foot in the last 10 years? I mean, we used to flip in Watauga all the time because we could buy it that cheap. In fact, the last home I sold in Watauga on a flip was in 2019, the early part. It was over 3,000 square feet. I sold it for $245 and I thought I got a deal. Literally. I paid like $170 for it maybe? No, I didn't pay that. I paid like $150 for it. I had maybe $215 in it when I sold it. So that's cheap. It was 3,000 square feet. Now that home is ridiculous, right? I can't even imagine what it would be. That was in Parkland, I think is what it was. So we're still out of the market, we're still overpriced. The thing that I've been sharing with you guys that still holds true for Texas, and this is where I'm gonna put a big asterisk next to everything I said about Texas doesn't go down that much, but except for this one little asterisk which makes me nervous, is what's the affordability in Texas? You guys remember that from the last couple of months?
It's one of the highest.
Even as tax.
We're the most expensive in the
Yeah.
country. We're the highest overpriced, and we are the highest like price per, or payment per price.
It's worse than Austin.
Yes.
What, say that again?
We are, so Texas in general is the most overpriced market in the United States right now. It is 38% overpriced. So what that means is the homes are selling for 38% more than they should be based on normal market economics. And our payment versus price, so $300,000 home, you put down 5%, you have a $3,000 payment. You know what you have in a regular state? $2,000.
Property taxes.
Because of property taxes and insurance.
That's not
We are
making sure,
out
it's just
of
because of the
control.
taxes and insurance, correct? Because that's
It's
what's
just-
killing us all.
It is, and it's, what's happened in the past is we've made up for it by having lower sales prices.
Yeah.
But now we have, our sales prices are matching the average across the United States. In fact, if you catch me lying here, I think it was like 370 was the average sales price across the United States for last month. What's our average sales price in Texas, guys? It's like 350 to 375. That's the first time in history, and I've been doing this since 1990, we'll call it 1995. I started literally in December, I started 3 days from now, December of 94,
But
on
it's,
December 16th.
but DFW is 460 something, isn't it?
Yeah, we're high. So we're over the average sales price for the United States. Never in my career have we been over that number.
There's nothing we can do with the taxes in Texas.
No.
I was report.
No, because we just elected all the same officials right back. I mean, you honestly, I'm not being political, I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, it doesn't matter at all. But the only way you're gonna fix it is to elect guys who think differently than the ones that we have. From a taxation standpoint, I think there was only one guy on the Republican ticket that was it Huffines that said, let's eliminate property taxes, and let's go a different route. Now, I don't know if you can eliminate them, but you can darn sure change some things. Like, let's get off of 2.6, and y'all know DFW is also the highest tax rate in all of Texas. So Texas has one of the top 3 tax rates in the country, and DFW is the highest in Texas. Austin is like 2%. How awesome would that be if we were 2% on taxes? Think about that. Houston's kind of the same thing. I've got clients in Houston and Austin buying at 1.8, 1.9% tax rates.
I saw this morning. This one in Eustis in Van Zandt County for 1.6, I almost threw up.
What would it have been worth in 2019?
No, the tax rate.
Oh, that's the tax
It's
rate?
1.6.
Oh, yeah, I almost puked a little bit too. That's what our problem is. So, and the issue you have, and I'll use a personal example for it. My in-laws are from north of Boston, Portland, Maine. They moved to Florida 3 years ago because in New England, anybody north of, we'll just call it north of Washington DC generally. Anybody in that area, if you've made it in life, you move to Florida. I don't know why, because they're stupid. So they picked up and moved to Florida, went to Tampa, and paid cash for a home for like $450, which is now worth $650. And they need to probably come here because they're starting to have health issues and other problems. So that house is free and clear. But, you know what his taxes are on a $650 house? $6,500. And he's mad, like stupid mad about that. So now he's gonna pick up and come here and pay cash for a home and pay 2.6% or 2.4%. He's looking at like ropes and ramps, 2.2, which is cheap, right? 2.223. It's not affordable. So you can own your home free and clear, and he's not gonna be able to afford to pay the property taxes because they're retired. Now technically he will. He's just gonna complain about it, right? But that's the problem we have in Texas, which is also why, how many of you have been talking to out-of-state buyers recently? Like, are they still coming? Because I talk to them occasionally and they go, bye, as soon as I tell them payments. I mean, they literally hang up on me. And they go, I'll go someplace else. Hey guys, I really appreciate you guys coming out. Thank you very much. We are gonna be working, but not in here after Friday. So if you need us, call us. We'll be around. We'll be home, like I said, probably in PJs with a very long beard. Not necessarily sober, but we'll be around. So if I missed you, all Merry Christmas. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. You bet. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, your wife.
What party were you getting your wife at? We all, everyone shut up on the flight. What party?
That was Scott's work.
Maybe Scott can.
Scott, yeah, I was surprised.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
25,000 square foot.
I saw that.
I definitely, I don't know whether these properties moving quite as quick as
I got a baby and everything.
We had a lot of people there. We were there till, I think it's 8:30. We were there for 4 hours.
I had to call him, I know I'm in bed.
I literally looked at my kid and I go,